Championship leader Jeff Smith has at least managed to put himself on pole position for this race, with Kane Astin, who is third in the championship, starting alongside him. So that is an interesting situation. Kane knows he needs to beat Jeff Smith really in this race in order to have a chance at the championship, and Aaron Smith, who's second in the championship, is even further back on the grid. We can take a look actually at how the grid will line up then for this first race of the weekend. Jeff Smith on pole, Kane Astin alongside, then Ben Colburn and Rupert Death sharing row number 2. Aaron Smith, the number 1 car, second in the championship with that 11-point deficit to try and overcome, starting 5th on the grid alongside Martin Wager. Then Colin Peacock and Ian Curley will share the 4th row of the grid. And Colin Peacock, the veteran of Mini Miglia racing, although actually that's slightly different to the grid on our screen. It's got Ian Curley ahead of Phil Bullen-Brown by the looks of it, so Peacock perhaps an old starter. Then Damien Harrington and Steve Ewell will complete the top 10, with Sean King and James Cuthbertson together on row number 6. 7th row of the grid then for Ryan Taylor and Joe Polly, then Tony LeMay and Mark Sims at the back of the Mini Miglia grid. Then we've got Josh Evans and Richard Colburn. They'll be at the front of the Libre class, I believe, with Julian Proctor and Steve Trench next. Phil Harvey at the back of that grid. And then we've got Ross Billison with Damien Harrington, those two at the front of the Mini 7 class. So the 7s starting a little bit further back. They split the classes just to prevent too much confusion at the start of the races. So Billison and Harrington at the front of that grid, and then it will be Joe Thompson, yes, and Darren Thomas with Glenn Woodbridge and Phil Gillibrand. And then in the 7Ss, we've got Matthew Ayres and Michael Winkworth at the front of that grid. Row 2 of that grid for Andrew Hack and Callum Perfect, with Oliver Burkett, Bertie Willard and Dave Rees bringing up the rear. So yeah, 4 classes in total, 2 within the Miglias, 2 within the 7s, if you like. So you've got the outright Mini Miglia Championship, then you've got the Dunlop Mini Libras, followed by the 7s and the 7Ss. So slight technical differences in the cars, but no difference whatsoever in the competitive nature of the races. So quite a long hold here then before the cars are released out onto a green flag lap, which will not really be doing much for the nerves of the drivers, particularly those in championship contention. It's always a difficult thing, I think, Richard, to arrive at the final round of the championship with a lead such as the lead that Jeff Smith and Ross Billison have, because yes, they're ahead. It's a decent little margin, 10, 11 points, but 10 or 11 points can evaporate very quickly with a couple of bad races. I sometimes wonder whether maybe the pressure is more on the leader than it is those who have the catching to do.
Yeah, I think race-wise, generally what I found is people like to chase and grab the lead on the last lap. Points-wise, they like to have the lead in the points.
Yes, absolutely. And certainly here at Silverstone, this is one of those venues, isn't it, where, to your point, being in the lead at the start of the final lap, not always the best place to be, especially with that long run down the Hanger Straight. Many a race over the years have been settled in the final few metres, even here on the Silverstone International Circuit, and these cars just made for good racing.
They are absolutely brilliant, and it comes back to I think too many cars have got too fast and too big.
Yes.
And you can't, I mean, the new Minis are fine, but these are just great. They jostle, they work. If you saw them at Thruxton, we've had them guesting with us at the BRSSC many times this year, and it's just great racing. You can't. They are fast though, having said that. Are they too fast? Probably not. No,
I think they've just about got the magic formula, haven't they, really? And not a huge amount of grip either. Certainly in these conditions, short wheelbase, front wheel drive, damp, greasy conditions. We could see a few Larry moments, I suspect, at the start of the race. As I said, a 20-minute race this will be. Not sure whether they're going to be given 2 green flag laps here, because it was dry, I think, for the qualifying session earlier on this morning. So if they do blast past the pits at the end of this lap, don't be alarmed. It's just a second green flag lap that they may or may not be given. But we're getting our first view, as are the drivers, of the track conditions out there. And I'm not seeing, I know they're going quite slowly, I'm not seeing a lot of spray or standing water. It is just fairly damp and greasy, really. But these can sometimes be even more tricky than full wet conditions, really. Especially through corners such as Abbey, Stowe, these sort of medium high-speed corners. These cars can get a little bit twitchy. But Jeff Smith, fairly experienced these days in this category of racing, knows what he's doing. He has had a really strong season so far this year, has Jeff Smith, with a handful of race victories, including, he's had 1, 2, 3 outright wins, I think. He's rarely been off the podium, and that's what you build a championship campaign on. It's not necessarily about winning the most races, is it? It's all about consistently scoring those points, and that's something Jeff Smith over the years has always been pretty handy at doing.
Yep, very good at doing that, very quick as well. And that's the key thing about this for me, is the quality of the cohort in this championship. Year after year, so many excellent drivers. Probably stronger than, I can't think of any others that are as strong as this lineup.
No, I think you're probably right. It's not an easy championship to jump into and win straight away, is it? So you're going to have to take on the established names. Jeff Smith, Kane Aston, Aaron Smith, all very experienced drivers. Ian Curley, former British touring car racer as well, fourth in the championship. Ian, he is out of contention, I think, now, at least realistically, perhaps not mathematically. He's on 185 points, which is 41 off the championship lead. So really, it's Jeff and Aaron Smith versus Kane Aston for the Miglia Championship. The Sevens, Ross Billis and Joe Thompson, they are a country mile, really, ahead of Damien Harrington in third position. Within the Mini Libras, by the way, it's a 6-point lead for Josh Evans over Julian Proctor, so they're the two to keep an eye out on there. The only one we don't really need to worry about too much is the Mini 7Ss, because Matt Ayres is 63 points up in that class. The lights, though, are out. We're away in racing, and the Melias, of course, leaving the line before the Sevens further back, and it's been a pretty even start, I think, for both front row men. Jeff Smith on the outside with his headlights ablaze, Kane Aston on the inside, and Aston will get the lead into Abbey Corner for the first time, but on the exit of the corner, Jeff Smith's wide line in look has given him more speed on the exit. He's fought his way back over to the right-hand side of the road, and Aaron Smith, I think that is, trying to get involved. So Smith, Richard from 5th on the grid, already up there mixing it for the lead.
They are. Ian Curley has a little wide moment there, put it all back on. Coleman in the mix as well. Ben Coleman needs to go and have a Westbourne chat with him a little bit later on. Bertie Woolard in 736. Yeah, decent start. Tricky conditions out there, but who better than the Minis, as you mentioned, on the green flag lap to get this underway? Oh,
you can see them skating around, though. That's Matt Ayres getting sideways, the sort of champion-elect, really, in the 7Ss with a big moment. But as I predicted, there's someone already in the gravel, I'm afraid. That is the number 24, and that will be Steve Yule, who has beached it, and he's going no further, and he's furious with himself. Looks smacking the steering wheel in frustration, and that car may need recovering under perhaps a safety car period. We'll wait and see. Right, then 2 by 2 they come into the club chicane. This is not a rolling start. This is the end of lap 1, and it is still just about Jeff Smith-ish who leads. He's got Aaron Smith up alongside him, though. So Aaron Smith, definitely the big mover here, and again, has to try and beat Jeff Smith in this race if he can. He's up the inside through the second part of club corner. Absolutely neck and neck at the line. 6 1,000ths of a second between them. It may remain that close until the checkered flag.
Yeah, probably will, wouldn't it? Rupert Death in the mix as well, just chasing across the line. In third place, then Ben Colburn. Smith versus Smith, though, out front. Can Jeff 6,000ths of a second down. Absolutely nothing in mini terms, though they can all be glued together metaphorically, as Death has a quick look up the inside. This was not a Miglia, I have to say, but Mini was my first car. I've had 3 of them over the years. Super little cars. Too expensive now, though. Yes,
not cheap, are they, really? But and yet this still remains a reasonably affordable way of going racing, and that certainly is the idea of the things like the 7S class, for example, which is supposed to be more of an entry level into this category of racing, and you can then make the relevant adjustments to your car over the years to move up through the other classes. Yellow flags out at Village. That will be because of Steve Yule's car that's deposited itself into the gravel trap, but the 7 class led by Damien Harrington at the end of the opening lap from Joe Thompson's second position. I think they were still in that order as they went through Village for the second time. The Melias, though, already down at club for the end of lap number 2, and it is Aaron Smith who has got himself in front for now. Jeff Smith second, Rupert Death third, Colburn fourth. Kane Aston, really the big loser, because he and Aaron Smith have had very differing starts to the race. Aaron coming from 5th on the grid to the lead, and Kane Aston, well, he's up to 4th position now, but having started on the front row, would have quite liked to be up there fighting for the race lead.
Just goes to prove it doesn't really matter whether you're in the first row or the 4th or 5th row here. If you get a decent start, they can all mix it up and start to get stuck in. I forget, we'll see the Jordans later on. They weren't at Cadbury's, only limited campaign for the Jordans so far this year. Hence, if you're wondering why they're not in this one, if you've looked at the entry list, as Colburn and Curley go side to side. 2 great family names, of course, from racing. Curley, the legend. I think I used to watch him back in the day, probably in the 90s. Was he going that long ago? Possibly. Just starting out.
Early 2000s, I think he was in the BTCC, but he would have been racing other one-make categories in the 90s, definitely. So, yeah, definitely a name from the past, Ian Curley, but he's going well in that battle inside the top 6 at the moment. 7's come through a 1.8 second lead for Joe Thompson, as that was Matt Ayres getting sideways. So Thompson has moved into the lead now of the 7 class. Damien Harrington all the way down now in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th place. So he's had a disastrous lap, going from the lead down to 6th. A big move round the outside as drivers, Richard, are desperately searching for some grip.
Yep, they'll look all the way through the 20-minute. I'm actually thinking ahead to podiums already here. 12 interviews.
Oh, good luck. Well, you're going into lunch break, so the first half of the lunch break can be the mini podium.
And then the grid walk.
And then there's yes, we do have a grid walk then for the Fiesta ST240s coming up, which is a rare treat for that championship. So stick around through the lunch break, plenty of entertainment still coming. Right, through we go, and Aaron Smith setting the fastest lap, despite the fact he's in the lead, punching a hole in the air for Jeff Smith, but he's not really getting away from Jeff Smith. Jeff and Rupert Deeth very much going with him, then Kane Astin on his own in 4th, and then this battle for 5th position. That is Ben Colburn now ahead of Ian Curley, but Curley wants to do something about that, goes to the inside into Village, slips through, but Colburn will have the better traction on the exit, and I think we'll get the place back.
Yep, the Colburn family. I'm not sure, do Westbourne run like Jordan's, or they just run themselves in this, treat it as a weekend off? I need to check with Ben and Richard and the folk to see whether they do. This is going off pear-shaped there. And yeah, definitely the Jordan family, this is their break from prep to come and do these. And I said, you must get approached by this. He said, yeah, we do, but this is our downtime.
Yes.
I wonder if it's the same for the Colburns at Westbourne.
May well be. I've not spoken to them actually recently. So yeah, you may well be right. Try and do some digging, but you can see why. It's just a nice, fun environment to come and spend a weekend in. That's one of the big appeals of this championship. It's not just the really close racing on track, which we're seeing a good example of here, but also the camaraderie, great camaraderie amongst the drivers in the paddock. Change for 2nd place there. Rupert Deeth moving ahead of Jeff Smith. Now, I know it's early days, we're only about a quarter of the way into this race, but this does have some championship implication. If Jeff Smith were to finish 3rd and Aaron Smith could win the race with a couple of cars between them, that definitely helps Aaron in the battle for the championship. So right now, things going well for car number 1, which leads the way. There are dropped scores, yes. There are 3 dropped scores, and of course we still have 3 races to go, but I can try and do the maths for you. I'll figure that out in a minute. But certainly Kane Astin had a bad start to the season. I remember that back at Donington Park, had 2 non-finishes. So he's basically used his drop scores. Jeff Smith had a non-finish last time out at Castle Combe in the 2nd race. And another one actually in round 6, which was at Snetterton. So yeah, they've all had a bit of misfortune over the course of the season. They can't really afford any more here at this final round.
No, all about consistency. The drops were a complete nightmare, aren't they? We've got it all weekend.
Yes, every championship. Well, apart from TCR and Civic Cup, because they've done the sensible thing of not allowing drivers to drop the final round, which does rather help our brains to have a little moment to themselves. Right, this is a good battle going on in the 7s. Matt Ayres and Ross Billison there doing battle. Ayres, remember, running actually in the 7Ss, so he and the 796 car, which is Michael Winkworth, they're together and they're fighting for the lead in the 7S category. They're almost, though, at the front of the 7s outright now. They are admittedly 4.5 seconds, I think, behind Joe Thompson, who's dominating in the 7s right now. But the next 2 cars, both 7Ss, and both absolutely nose to tail as we approach 1/3 race distance.
All good from the minis at the moment. The news, by the way, roving camera, we're still waiting to sort that out, so that might be an issue for podium interviews.
Okay.
Which would be a pity. And grid walk.
That would be a shame,
especially as I didn't do any. They're working on it. Yeah, good guys, of course. Friends at Alpha Live, as ever, working hard to do it. I didn't interview any senior Fiesta drivers this morning because I thought we'll get them on the grid walk.
Well, we've got plenty of time, and I've got faith in the Alpha Live crew that we'll get something over the lunch break. But anyway, we'll worry about that in 12 minutes' time or so, because that's how long is left in this race. And I think we're getting a bit of lappery already, aren't we? Yeah, I think the Miglias are now catching the back of the 7s grid, because of course some of the 7s started some way behind the Miglias, so they were already 10 seconds behind at the start of the race. They were of course slower than the Miglias and are now being reeled in pretty quickly, as here into Club comes the battle for the 7S lead, and that is a change, I believe. Oh, there's a big moment behind for the number 3 car. That was Ross Billison. Did he end up in the gravel? I think he managed to carry on, luckily, and they're about to be caught now by the Miglia leaders, look, who are coming through, and we've had a change for the lead there, look, because Rupert Deeth is ahead of Aaron Smith on this lap. So Rupert Deeth, the black number 23 car, up ahead of Aaron Smith, and Jeff Smith still there, keeping a watching brief in 3rd. They've been caught, though, by Kane Astin, so it's now 4 for the lead, really. Kane Astin is right there with them, as ahead of them Damien Harrington's race continues to not really quite go to plan, it's got to be said. given the fact that he started up near the front of the grid. This grid, though, of course, based upon Cadwell Park. This was a race that should have happened at Cadwell Park, so the grid is not based upon any qualifying performance this morning. It is based on how they qualified or how they would have started the race at Cadwell. So there may well be a few drivers who are a little bit out of position, as Rupert Death and Aaron Smith have a bit of a close moment in traffic, Richard.
They do. Ross Billison, the driver involved. Of course, the other class are having their own race, so it's difficult for them to have to judge, but they will have to respect the blue flags. And they'll see the faster cars coming through, but there's going to be a train of them. So it's going to make life a wee bit difficult for those guys that are... But at least we've got the race. That's the main thing. Although you couldn't get two completely different circuits to Camberwell to Silverstone, could you? I qualified really going up and down on a tight track and then come to an airfield circuit.
Yes, which I suspect is why we've seen quite a lot of movement in this race. Drivers who maybe excelled at Cadwell struggling here. Although you'd have thought this was the easier track, but not really. It is quite a deceptively challenging circuit to really wrap your head around. Here come the Miglias then. Death, the black car, leading. Aaron Smith, number 1, second. Then Jeff Smith, number 46, third. Kane Astin, number 11, in 5th position. And bit of contact there. That was Ian Curley trying to muscle his way through, and I think he's damaged his car, has he? Ian Curley's car slowing dramatically. Got into the back of one of the 7S leaders, might have been Matt Ayres, and all of a sudden Ian Curley's car has lost drive completely, so that might have done a radiator or knocked some electrics loose, but his car is going nowhere fast, and hopefully he'll be able to pull out of harm's way without the need for recovery. The leaders, though, move into the second half of the race with Death out in front. So at the moment, Rupert Death, who is not a championship contender, is up there outscoring those who are. Ian Curley's car has stopped on the exit of Club Corner. It's well out of the way, you would think. And so hopefully we won't have any need for safety car intervention. We'll see what the clerk of the course decides to do. But the rest of the pack then makes its way down the Hanger Straight. And are we about to see a challenge here from Aaron Smith? He's got the fastest lap at the moment, which I think is worth a bonus point in this championship, so that will help his championship charge. He would love, though, to take maximum 20 points for a race victory. Is he about to make the move then? We wait for them to come into sight. Here they go. He is making the move around the outside at Stowe Corner, and he should have the traction on the run down the hill to move into the lead. So Rupert Death then loses the lead once again. But I would argue, Richard, that these two are slightly now detaching themselves from those behind, who themselves have swapped over and have changed for third.
They have, but things could change up again. Still got 8 minutes on the clock, just under half the race remaining in this one. So Death, Smith and Smith, Jeff Smith, I think he's playing the waiting game here a little bit. He knows enough about this sort of racing to be able to pull himself back at the right time. But Aaron Smith's still the leader from Rupert Death in P2. Oh, Kane Astin now, isn't it? Up into third place as they cross the line again, with Jeff Smith down in 4th. Ben Colburn next up, a wee bit detached as well. Haven't spoken to Richard, so if we have got the mic working, I will try and get our Libra class leader, assuming I haven't put the pen of death on him, writing him down on my
Oh, you've not written it down, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Far too early for that, Richard. Rookie error. Speaking of the Libras, by the way, Julian Proctor is at the moment outscoring Josh Evans. Remember, they came into this race just 6 points apart in Josh's favour, while Josh at the moment runs third in the class, and Julian Proctor is in second, and there are nearly 10 seconds between them. They were just in shot there going across the line, so we're going to get that gap coming down slightly, it would seem, as another big slide there. That was Fraser Hack, wasn't it? Getting it all out of shape through the right-hand hairpin at Village. Difficult in this race with 4 classes to keep track of. The other one, of course, is the 7S's, but that championship-wise was pretty much decided. Race, though, far from it, because actually Michael Winkworth and Damien Harrington still only a second apart at the front of that particular route. The Miglias, though, come out of Club Corner, and that is definitely a bit of daylight now, isn't it, between Rupert Death, who's back in the lead, and Aaron Smith, who's back down to second.
How's he done that over a lap? Jump into the lead and whack a little bit of a gap, nearly a second.
By setting the fastest lap, that's how. He was the only driver who improved on his personal best that time. Did a 1:23.5, 1.3 seconds quicker than Aaron Smith. So perhaps as the conditions are changing, maybe they're coming to Rupert Death more than they are Aaron Smith.
Done that famous setup for the late in the race setup.
Yep.
Played for and got.
They're not long races, but over 20 minutes, particularly on a damp track, the conditions do change quite significantly with so many cars, 30 cars circulating, clearing the water off the surface, laying down some rubber. Oh, Ross Billison isn't laying down any more rubber, though. His car is off in the gravel down at the club chicane, and Ross Billison had been running well, hadn't he? Yes, he was third of the 7s at the time. And no more. He's gone straight on by the looks of it, but luckily is a long way off the racetrack.
Yep, so that won't cause too many problems, we hope. A lot of these drivers used to race in the Mighty Mini Championship, which was a BRSEC staple before it moved onwards. And these guys weren't at the festival, the mini festival.
Oh, were they not?
Croft. I don't think.
Right.
So when I looked at the... So how you can have a mini festival without Se7en and Miglia's?
Yes, arguably the best supported mini championship in the country, but there you go. Maybe they were busy elsewhere that weekend. So it can be a challenge, can't it, putting calendars together? There's a lot of talk about that at this time of year, isn't there, amongst organising bodies and clubs and championships all trying to fight over dates for next year. And it's not just as simple as saying, right, well, we'll have that championship, and that championship at that event. It takes a bit more organisation than that. Right, 5 minutes and 20 seconds to go, so we're nearly three-quarter race distance, and Aaron Smith, rather predictably, I suppose you could say, has now caught back up to Rupert Death. I say predictably not because I think that Death is slower than Aaron, but just because that's the nature of this race, this kind of racing. It's never usually a done deal until the final few corners, and Aaron Smith right back on the tail of Rupert Death again now. So Death leads the Miglias, Aaron Smith second, Kane Astin third. The Libras still being led fairly comfortably, it must be said, by Richard Colburn, with Julian Proctor second and Josh Evans a distant third. In the sevens themselves, Joe Thompson leading the way. But Joe has now been caught, look, by the by one of the 7S cars anyway, Winkworth. And so Winkworth, who was at one point, I think, 7 seconds behind Joe Thompson, has now very much caught up to him. Whilst finally in the 7Ss, yes, Winkworth leading from Matt Ayres, about 1.5 seconds between those two. So this is the closest of the class battles. It is between the Miglia front runners and Aaron Smith now getting down to the business end of the race, where if he's got a plan, it's almost time to act that out, because he's got a golden opportunity here, Richard, to really take some points out of seemingly a struggling Jeff Smith.
Yeah, I thought Jeff was playing the game, as I said earlier on. Shows what I know, absolutely nothing at all. And he's dropped too far back, hasn't he? Unless we get a safety car or a miracle to pull him back in. If we get a safety car, it's going to finish under safety car at the moment. But Death coming, not doing himself any favours there, and Aaron Smith won't need a second invitation unless this is Rupert saying, go on, have the lead and I'll get you on the last lap in the game of proverbial chess.
Well, if you're going to give the lead up strategically, that's a good way to do it, isn't it? Because that very much looked like it was unintentional, I have to say. He dressed that up nicely if that was all part of the plan. I've noticed a lot of drivers going into Village are taking that wide line, which you would expect in the wet to be the grippier side of the road, but they are the ones who keep getting sideways. The ones who go for the apex seem to be finding some grip, so not sure whether that's just a quirk of that particular corner or just the tyres that are used in this championship maybe working better on the normal racing line, but just an interesting observation from up at that part of the track. That is the 7S leader, by the way. Winkworth getting ahead of Joe Thompson, the Mini 7 leader. So the 7Ss are now officially out in front. And in fact, the number 29 car, that is, look, no, it's not, that's the 89. Coming up the inside of Joe Thompson. 29 is Damien Harrington, who is second of the 7s. And he's not far behind these two now, as their battling has delayed them slightly.
Yep, throwing it in. Real Italian job stuff, that, isn't it, as the leaders cross the line again.
Now look at this, Jeff
Smith's coming back into it, isn't he?
I think he was listening to you,
Richard. He fancies
Richard.
a podium.
Well, he's definitely timed this well, hasn't he? Right back on the tail of Kane Astin. Did he go through at Abbey Corner? The answer is no, not yet, but he's trying into Village. See what line Rupert Death goes for this time. Yes, look, turns in earlier this time, realises that's where the grip is, seemingly. And Aaron Smith followed him in as well. But in the background, Jeff Smith, the championship leader, trying desperately to salvage something from this race. And Richard, 2.5 minutes, that's an age in Mini Miglia terms. He may yet win the race.
Yeah, he could do. You've got to say the gap's probably a little bit too big, isn't it? But Death and Aaron Smith still very much at it. Fastest lap, Smith.
Yeah, exactly. That was a 23.4. That was 1.5 seconds quicker than the leader. So that could be doable. He's 1.8 seconds back, so maybe he's got the long run setup on his car that's working well. So through come the 7s, still with Winkworth ahead of Thompson. Damien Harrington, though, has caught them. Now that might now be Harrington. No, Harrington's the green car behind. But he suddenly is knocking on the door of race leader Joe Thompson, who again seems to have faded as the race has gone on.
Yep, maybe gone out with that perhaps wetter setup. The skies are clearing a little bit. Touches of blue sky coming through, so circuit may be drying out a little bit, which could be handy for the lunch break. Having said that, still spray being kicked up. You can see some of the wipers working. Aaron Smith's wiper, interestingly, not working, and Dee's still there out front, but Smith could be timing this one about right.
Jeff Smith, by the way, did get ahead of Kane Aston, so he's into third. It's now all the more important, really, that Aaron Smith makes a move on Rupert Deeth. They go either side of one of the back markers. Deeth is very late on the brakes into Village, but gets the car stopped, and then has to slip up the inside of Oliver Burkett's number 746 car, as Richard goes downstairs in the hope of being able to interview some podium finishers. We'll wait and see if we do get the chance to. A few technical gremlins maybe will prevent that, but we'll do our best to hear from some of our Mini Miglia and Se7en podium finishers. We're going to have one more lap to go at the end of this one then, and Rupert Deeth with not a significant advantage, it's got to be said, over Aaron Smith. Down towards Stoke Corner they're about to go. Here you get a good view of that part of the circuit from up on the outside of Club Corner. Through comes Joe Thompson, look in the background, still actually now with a car between himself and Damien Harrington, second in his class. Waiting for Deeth and Smith, and I think they were side by side coming into the club chicane. So Rupert Deeth and Aaron Smith, I think, were side by side. Who's going to come out of club with the race lead is the question. Here they come, and it's Aaron Smith. Aaron Smith is back ahead of the black car of Rupert Deeth, and so Aaron Smith then picking up a position, crucial position, the lead, but Jeff Smith is getting closer, you know. He might just run out of time. There is one more lap to go, and Jeff Smith, weaving dramatically over towards the pit wall to try and cool the tyres, was again faster than both of the leaders that time. That was a 24.1, 9/10 quicker than Rupert Deeth ahead, so he is 1.8 seconds back. I don't think he's quite going to catch them unless they really get into each other on this final lap, but Jeff Smith in third is looking good for some points, and actually might now have a shot at Rupert Deeth, because Deeth got very sideways there through the right-hander at Village and has dropped away significantly from Aaron Smith. It's that Village corner where he seems to be struggling the most, Rupert Deeth. It's not the first time we've seen the back of the car break loose at that part of the circuit, and he has once again had a bit of a moment there which possibly now has cost him any real chance of the race win. We'll see what situation they are in as they arrive down at Stowe Corner. Here they come. Well, no, that's the Se7en, sorry. The next group behind will be the Millies there in the background. Rupert Deeth was closing back in slightly on Aaron Smith, I think. Joe Thompson will have another lap to do here as the leader of the Se7ens, because he's not quite been lapped for a second time. But there, Rupert Deeth has caught Aaron Smith, almost had a go at him into the club chicane, but was just a bit too far back. So had he not had that moment at Village, he might have been able to have a real go into the final few corners. But as it is, Aaron Smith is going to claim a crucial race victory. I think it's only his second of the year, that, but a really good time to get back onto the top step of the podium. Aaron Smith wins, Rupert Deeth second, and Jeff Smith salvages a podium at least, but will drop a handful of championship points to Aaron Smith. He does, though, beat Kane Aston significantly. So Kane Aston, who was already slightly distant third in the championship, 16 points off the lead, has not really helped his chances there, unfortunately, with a third position. Ben Colburn comes home fifth, and the rest of them streaming through behind. We've also had our... we haven't yet had the Libra winner, actually. That will be Richard Colburn, remember, as more of them streamed through. So that was a couple of the Libra cars, but not the leaders in the Libra class. Richard Colburn, number 219, should be amongst the next to come through, I think. But anyway, we'll get him across the line in a moment to win the Libra class. The Se7en class should be won by Joe Thompson, although Damien Harrington wasn't far behind him, was he? That, I think, is Colburn. Yes, it was. So Colburn 219, then the black and orange car across the line to win in the Libra class, and that just leaves the Se7ens and the 7Ss. Now the Se7en leader, Joe Thompson, and the 7S leader, Michael Winkworth, were together. Here they go, look, Thompson ahead of Winkworth, but where is Harrington? Where is Damien Harrington? Harrington is not in that picture, so Damien Harrington, second of the Mini 7s, where's he got to on the final lap? I don't think he's got ahead of Joe Thompson. No, he hasn't. So Thompson gets the win in the 7s, Winkworth wins the 7Ss, but Damien Harrington has vanished on the final lap. So where he's gone, I don't know. He was already out of contention realistically for the Se7en championship, but still, he was on course maybe for a podium finish, and that now has gone by the wayside. So we will try and piece together where he's got himself to, but yeah, Damien Harrington does not reach the checkered flag. So Damien Harrington then the only one that hasn't made it around. Everyone else who was running at the time of the checkered flag has made it back, and Aaron Smith with a race win, as I said, hasn't done a lot of winning this year, Aaron Smith, but he has been a consistent podium finisher and has the best track record, I think, as far as drop scores. He's dropping more points than anybody else. And so we'll have to wait and see what the drop score situation is going to be. And I'll try and get some clarification from the Championship Mini7 Racing Club, perhaps overnight, about the point situation going into tomorrow. So, Aaron Smith, a winner, and in very tricky conditions as well, getting the better of Rupert Deeth there, but Deeth will be ruining that moment that he had up at Village Corner, where a tiny mistake really, but a mistake he'd made a few times before, was enough to cost him the run down the Hangar Straight. He closed back in on the race leader, but ultimately just wasn't quite able to get close enough to find a way through. A reminder then of the schedule for the rest of the day. Oh, there is Damien Harrington's car. Where is that? That's at... is that at Abbey? I'm not entirely sure where he's gone, to be honest, but he's... Oh, it's at the end of the start-finish straight. Yes, so that's the old Abbey chicane that he's pulled over at. So that's the beginning of the final lap. He's, I presume, pulled off. It's a strange place to end up going off, isn't it? Yes, he's pulled behind the barrier. Look, so he has had a mechanical failure that's taken him out of the race. That's a shame when he was running second place in class. So it was at the first corner that he disappeared. And that solves that mystery. So good stuff there from the camera operator up at Abbey Corner, spotting that car. So a reminder, as I started to say, about the plan for the rest of the day. We do now go into the lunch break, during which there is a grid walk for the AirTech Motorsport Fiesta ST240 Championship, and then they will be the first race after lunch. Now, we are running, whisper it everyone, about 5 or 10 minutes ahead of time. So that lunch break, which was due to end at 1:50, it might be brought forward to closer to 1:40 or so, but we'll keep you posted on that through the lunch break if we can. Aaron Smith, though, confirmation here as the race winner for our first Mini Miglia race of the weekend. First of 3 at this final round of the championship. Rupert Deeth comes home in second, Jeff Smith in third, with Kane Aston, Ben Colburn, Colin Peacock, Phil Bullen-Brown, James Cuthbertson, Ryan Taylor and Joe Polly completing the top 10. Mark Sims 11th, Richard Colburn 12th, with a class win for Richard, of course, winning in the Mini Libra class. Sean King was 13th and Julian Proctor was 14th, but crucially second of the Libras home. So he will close in now slightly on Josh Evans, who was next, but some way back in the end. The final margin between them was 14, nearly 15 seconds at the line. So Josh Evans will be hoping it's dry, I'm sure, tomorrow, in order to be able to go and defend his championship lead. Phil Harvey and Joe Thompson were next, also Mini Libras, ahead of Michael Winkworth and Matthew Ayres. Winkworth winning the 7S class and Matthew Ayres winning in the 7s themselves. Damien Harrington was next, ahead of Darren Thomas. Then it was Andrew Hack and Callum Perfect, with Oliver Burkitt, Glenn Woodbridge, Bertie Woolard and Dave Rees next. Followed by, in fact, that was the last car running, I think, because Ross Billison retired to the pit lane. Ian Curley stopped out on track. Steve Yule we saw in the gravel trap at Club Corner, sorry, it's the Link, I should say.